What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another Coach's Corner. This time, Thuram. It's obviously official. Actually, it's been official for a week now, but here's the Coach's Corner. And I can see I actually misspelled his name. That's a bad start, but I'm not going to change it. Forget about it. I misspelled his name. I'm not sure how that actually... I have no idea how that happened, but whatever. It is what it is. That's the channel. That's what it's all about. Mistakes. And here we are, which also people think it's a mistake that we brought in Thuram could potentially be a mistake. Not so much because of the profile of the player, maybe for some people, but more so about the debate of we kind of mismanage our funds right here. We paid 20 million for Thuram, which in today's market, you can classify as a real steal, basically. Only time will tell, obviously, if it's a steal success-wise. But on the money, like money-wise, value in today's market, you can kind of classify that as a very cheap signing. For a player who has a lot of upside, who has still a lot of potential, who hasn't fulfilled his potential at all. I know he's 23, and people might say you're still waiting on potential. I'm not talking about world-class potential, depending on what you classify as world-class. But in general, he still has a lot to learn and still a lot to improve. So let's just look at the player he is. The moment we got linked with him was also the moment that the news, the same journalists, the same sources suggested that it's not Thuram or Rabiot. It could be Thuram and Rabiot. And at the time, I was like, cool, but a bit confusing because they do similar things, or they try to do similar things. So is it really smart to keep him, to bring him in and keep Rabiot? That part is more, I'm leaning more towards, okay, now you're mismanaging funds. But in general, he is a player who is strong. He's actually decent on the ball. He likes to drive forward. That's obviously one thing that really stands out. In front of goal, he's okay. It's not that he gets tons of moments in front of goal, whatever. But when he does, he's actually decent. And you might say he's tall and lanky. He is tall, and I remember another player who was extremely tall. I'm not comparing him at all, but Pogba was really tall and he could do so many things. It was ridiculous. Obviously, that's not Thuram, but for his height, he can still do things that kind of surprised me a little bit. Even if you look at the highlights and the games I watched, which is 2 years ago now, or 2 seasons ago, basically, and it was a handful of games, he's technically sounded for a player that's actually that, tall. So that's obviously a strong point. That's good. That's good to have. If we look at his defensive stats, his defensive stats are decent, and it depends on what you're looking for. He's not a player who you will find on the ground a lot. Maybe a player like Vidal was on the ground a lot, recouping the ball, tackling, and he was actually excellent at that. He's not that type of player. He is also another player you can ask to defend very deep on the field. I think he will struggle with that. I think he will win the ball back more so higher up the pitch, which is why I'm kind of, quote-unquote, excited, or I'm looking forward to what Motta will do with that, because I think he's much better if he can press, excuse me, if he can press a bit higher on the pitch, and if he can, or he's asked to recoup the ball higher up the pitch. Excuse me. Because that's what he's better at. I don't think you can ask him to sit deep, on a consistent basis and shield that, back 4, back 3, whatever we're going to play. I don't think he's really good at that. But in general, I've seen worse stats. I've actually seen much worse stats from players with kind of the same profile. So that's what I'm expecting. Like, again, and we are all assuming that we're going to play a bit higher up the pitch in general, or like we will try to play a bit more on the front foot, try to win the ball back a little bit quicker compared to last season. So I think that part he will definitely help with. Not so much if we sit back and we soak up pressure week in, week out. I don't think he's actually very good at that part of the game. Passing wise, I was surprised. I was actually surprised because he's a player who actually he doesn't get a lot of touches on the ball if you compare with other players on the same profile or like the same area of the pitch. He's not a player who demands possession that much, if that makes sense. When he does, he tries to keep it simple, which I'm absolutely cool with. I'm not expecting him to ping the ball 30 meters deep. I'm not expecting him to do that at all. I'm expecting him to win the ball back, high up the pitch, and link it up, and make that movement in and around the box, which he does. His pass completion percentage is good. It's good, but again, it's a bit, maybe misleading because he's not a player who takes a lot of touches, compared to others. So the pass completion kind of should be pretty decent. Otherwise, you would have an issue for a player who doesn't really take much touches on the ball. Like I said, he's a player who, if he makes that one pass, it's high up the pitch. It is high up the pitch. It's not deep. Again, when he plays a player through 30 meters in, that's not him. He will play a player one-on-one, but it needs to be in and around the box. That's the type of player he is. Again, not a player who's going to take 1,000 touches in a game. I think that's a player Motta will use more of his movement. Get him in, get him winning the ball back, and just give it away quickly, release it. I think that's what he will be good at. But yeah, like I said, he doesn't really attempt much passes. He's not that type of player. But he's okay. He's pretty okay. Again, if you just look at his stature, his profile, you would assume that he was like a clumsy-ish player. But he has a good engine on him. He does. He runs a lot, which is positive always. And again, he's not just a runner. He's actually good on the ball. It's not world class, but it's not, oh my god, what am I watching here? That looks absolutely rubbish. That's also not the case. So I'm already fine with that one. Possession wise, kind of like I said earlier on, he's not a player who takes 1,000 touches. He will pop up in the box, but he's a player who just wins it back and kind of gives it away. As a dribbler, he's not that good. He's not a sounded dribbler. However, because of his stature, again, it reminds me a bit of Pogba and Rabiot if he has his day, where he takes 1-2 steps and it feels like he's dribbling past the player, but it's just not fast, but because of the steps he takes are so big, he can drive that ball past players really quickly and you foul him or he's just gone, just purely because he has that advantage over a lot of players. Take-ons, that's why the take-ons are so high. It's maybe a bit, misleading as well. He carries the ball. That's good. He's a player who likes to, again, take big steps. If you just look at his highlights, and that's good, that's more than enough for that to be for you to see that when his carries, actually his carries are a lot of time through the middle ish, and it's 1, 2, 3 touches, and it's like, okay, I started midfield and I'm halfway to goal almost, to exaggerate, but that's the carries he has. It's always progressive, that's why I said you don't use him to sit back, because that will be kind of a waste. Same for Douglas Luiz, I said last week. I don't think he will be actually, or as of now, I don't think he will be excellent at it, and you will kind of waste him, in my opinion. Just look at the carries into the final third. That's what he does. That's what he's good at, and most of the time, it's when he's winning the ball back as well. So use him like that, and I think we have a very good player on our hand. We do, with still a lot of untapped potential. Maybe coming off a down year, if you read the reports. Started off well, like in the entire Nice team, and then not collapsed completely, but like compared to how they started, took a little bit of a dive. But still, like they had a pretty good season. Actually had an excellent season. So let's see what Motta will do with him. Now the big question is, what about Rabiot? Is Rabiot gonna stay? Is Rabiot gonna leave? Is smart to keep Rabiot? And for me, the answer is no. Like, Rabiot has more experience, I agree, but it would be kind of a misusage of the funds if you spend the money on Thuram. Yes, it could be an opportunity, but if you give a long-term 3-year deal to Rabiot on, let's say, 7 million euros a season, is a really smart piece of business? I would say no. And I know we have depth, we need depth, but I don't think Rabiot is that type of world beater where I'm like, yeah, you need to have him most definitely in the squad. You know, if you compare the possession stats, it's kind of surprising. It is. It is it similar? It's similar-ish basically. Rabiot loses possession more. He has more progressive passes. What I said, I think carries is better. You know, he carries the ball better than Rabiot. Actually, Rabiot should be carrying the ball at the same level, but for some reason, it's very inconsistent. But in general, like it's a similar type of player with or without the experience at the highest level, basically, in terms of top level. You know, yes, needs, but like international football, Champions League football, that's the big difference right now. You know, is that a big issue? Not really. You know, a player needs to start at one point. You know, improving that. So I don't think that's an issue. But that's what I'm trying to do. Like, is it really smart to kind of invest the same money in a player that should be the same profile of player? If you look at defensive stats, again, you know, it's challenges lost, Rabiot, but that's not a shock. Last season was poor. It's not that Thuram is far off that, you know, again, they're very similar players. Yes, shot block, but that's kind of that's an outliner depending on the system you play, the team you play, the level of team you play as well. That, you know, is not really that important to me, but they're very similar players. That's why the big question mark is it really smart to keep Rabiot on the team? Because if you keep him on high wages, you're not going to play Thuram that much, are you? And you kind of spend 20 million on him. And if that's not a player you're going to use that much, wasn't it much more useful to use that money for a center back? Or maybe a right winger or a left winger or a striker backup? I don't know, you know, rather than getting him and then paying a player who has a similar profile, should have on a lot of points a similar profile, give him the wages where you sit back and you're like, okay, I cannot really actually bench that player. And if you want to move him on, he's on ridiculous wages. So it's going to be interesting what's going to happen with Rabiot and Thuram. But I think Thuram he will do good things, especially under Mota, under the idea that he wants to play. I think he will be a key player, you know, or he should become a key player with the attributes he has, with the potential setup he has. It should succeed. But then again, on paper, it all can sound great. You know, it looks great, but it needs to happen on the pitch, and that goes for everyone, for Mota, for Thuram, for any single player or any single coach coming into the club. It all looks good on paper most of the time, but will it look good on the pitch? That's a big question. Only time will tell, but that's it for me. I gave it a go. Let me know in the comments what you think about the signing. Do you think he's going to play a lot? Match day one? Who knows? And if so, what type of profile player you think he is and what type of role he's going to get under Mota. But that's it for me. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will speak to you very soon. Ciao.